All right, we'll continue our discussion with Josh Klosterman on wasp, and which also includes bees and ants and others. But the nesting is really interesting.
Yeah. So maybe let's talk specifically just about bees now and how bees nest.
Okay.
So most bees are these non-hive forming bees that are solitary on the landscape.
So we think of bees as our honeybees.
Yeah.
But most are not that way.
No, that's the exception. Yeah. So the honeybees are eusocial, which means that they have a hive where there's overlapping generations within that hive. There's a division of work between castes.
Oh wow.
Yes. And so they're very, very specialized bees, the honeybee is. But most bees, they're solitary, meaning that one individual female will emerge in the spring or whenever they emerge, go out and forage, build their own nest, and will make maybe only 10 to 15 individual young. And that's their life cycle. And then those young will hatch the next year, do the same thing. So within those solitary bees, there's an incredible and exceptional amount of diversity in how they build those nests. So most of the solitary bees, 70% of them nest underground. So they'll emerge from the ground in the springtime and go out and forage for whatever plant item that they need to bring back to their nest.
And is that just during certain times of this year that they're active, or is it all summer, or what?
It's usually dependent on what species it is. So some species of bee will be specialized to one plant or a group of closely related plants. So, for example, we have in springtime, all the spring ephemerals bloom. So before the trees put out their leaves in the forests around Missouri, we get this fantastic display of spring ephemerals. So there's
what's that mean?
It's a kind of spring plant that is only above ground when there is no leaves on the trees. So once the leaves on the trees come out, there's much more shade in the forest, and these spring plants die. So they're only around in the forest for
like our violets.
Yeah, exactly. Violets. Then there's like these spring beauties. There's bellworts. There's all of these.
A lot of the warts. Yes.
Yeah. There's all of these different plants that are only out in that March, April period of the year. And there's many bees that pollinate those plants that are only out in that March, April time of year. So there's Andrena origine, which is a specialist on spring beauties. So that bee is only out and active when spring beauties are out and active. And spring beauties have this like really beautiful pink pollen. So you can see this bee on this plant, or you'll see these bees like flying around, and they have like these big pink saddlebags. So depending on the color of the pollen of the plant, you can like see what bees.
So once that spring pollination is over, then they go back into underground.
Yep. They are then diapaused larvae that are like hibernating underground, waiting for the next year to swing back around in that plant. So they'll be underground for like 9 months. 10 months out of the year.
Just this very short period of time.
Yeah.
So they evolved together, didn't they? The bees and the plants. And the plants, yes.
They're like, they're dancing with each other through time.
We see climates changing all the time. Are we worried about that right now? That maybe do the bees come out at the same time every year, or are they, them and the plants, evolving together still? That's
a huge question that I don't think anyone really has a great idea about now, but there is a worry that there'll be this mix match of like emergence, like the bees will emerge before, or the plant will bloom before the bees emerge, and will be gone by the time the bees emerge. But we really don't understand very well what cues a bee to emerge from their nests underground. if it has to do with maybe the plant coming into bloom, maybe they're synced up in that way. Is it just some environmental variable, or does it have to do with the fact that that plant is in bloom at that time? You know,
something triggers.
Yes, and nobody really has a great idea about that yet. It's a kind of a big mystery.
And this is like probably a small bee, isn't it?
Yeah, that Spring Beauty one is it's very small, and it's one of the first bees to emerge every year, and it emerges when that plant comes, and that's one of the first plants to bloom in Missouri every year.
Now, you were saying though that a lot of the mother bee, the female bees, their whole life is just they build the nest, they bring food they lay the eggs, bring food there, and then they're gone. They're gone. They die in the wintertime.
Yeah, they die, and they leave their eggs. So they spend their entire adult life provisioning a nest for a young that they will never see.
Wow. Talk about motherhood.
Yeah.
The ultimate sacrifice.
It's pretty incredible.
So these females that emerge, are they from the eggs?
Yep. They're from that same generation that their mother built a little nest in the ground in. So they'll emerge that following year on whatever mysterious cue that we don't know.
Wow. So what else about bee nesting and?
Yeah. So that's just one example. So we got like 70% of bees are nesting in the ground. And what's really interesting about that is they're specialized to even specific kinds of ground. So depending on the soil texture, like if there's lots of sand in the soil or lots of clay, you have species that are specialized to those kinds of soils. So you'll have a completely different community of bees in areas that are sandy than you will in areas that are very clay-like soils.
Or a forest soil could be different.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, back there in the fall, I tripped out in my woods and fell down face first, and wow, this is a nice soil. So I mean, it's heavy in leaf litter and organic matter, so it's going to probably attract a little different type of bee or
definitely insect. Yeah, definitely. Like forest bees are much different than like bees that are out in a prairie.
Yes.
Say. Yeah, and like a forest comes with a whole different set of challenges for a bee. If you're a bee flying through a forest and you need to find your nest in the ground, and you built this one nest in this one place, it's going to be much harder to find your nest in a forest covered with the same kind of leaf litter than it is maybe like in along a creek margin where you know exactly where that meander, where the sand is, so that you can go and yeah. So forests, each habitat provides a different set of challenges for each species that exists in that habitat.
Because like with half a mile of my house, I've got prairie, I've got forest, and I've also got creek that goes through.
Yeah.
So we have 3 different habitats, couldn't we?
Yeah, 3 different habitats that are probably all going to have different species of bees existing in those habitats because of the plants that are there and also the physical attributes.
Right. And you mentioned on a creek, we have the cut bank and the fill bank. Now the cut's going to be, it could be rocky.
Yeah.
And would that have a whole different...
Totally. And vertical. The difference between slope is also very important for what species of bee will nest where. There's this one species of bee that you'll see out here in Columbia. I'll talk about 2. There's 2 species of bee. They're both soil nesting bees, but they like to nest in vertical or sloped areas. One of them is Anthophora abrupta. It's a kind of chimney bee. If you go on Stadium Drive, right where Grindstone Creek, there's a bridge. Yes. There's a bridge if you go on the bike path under that bridge and look up where the bridge is overhanging, there's a nesting aggregation of about probably 2,000 individuals of Anthophora abrupta. It is a spectacle. You go there in mid-May to June, and there are thousands of these bumblebee-looking things flying in and out of these like chimney-like holes under this bridge right next to campus. And they're a type of bee that won't sting you, so you can walk right up into the aggregation. And even though it looks like there's a very large hive, I'm using the word aggregation, it's a group of individual nests. So even though it looks like a big hive in the ground and there's many bees and activity going on, it's really just one individual going to its one nest in that big complex of
So they
nests.
each have their own nest.
It's like an apartment building.
Yeah.
Kind of. Yeah. So they go and phenomenally, they know exactly what one is theirs most of the time. So they can, within this like group of 2,000 holes in the ground, an individual can figure out what hole it made.
But they're going out and pollinating crops.
Yeah. Or
anything. It could be crops. It could be just about anything. So let's go back to honeybees. We hear a lot of worry about honeybee decline, and that we'll lose our ability to pollinate our crops.
Yeah.
But the native bees have been doing this for ever.
Especially, so this is very important when it comes to crops that are native to like the North American landscape. So things like squash and strawberries and blueberries, all of these fruit crops that are...
Probably our brambles too.
Yeah, raspberries,
yes,
very important. All of these North American crops are more efficiently pollinated by native bees.
Because it makes a difference on the flower type, the size for that bee to get inside of it.
Yeah, and honeybees, they're very indiscriminate in how they forage. So a honeybee will go from a raspberry flower to a blueberry flower to a squash flower, and it will take that squash pollen and rub it all over a blueberry's.
Which does no good.
And exactly. And it could even clog up that flower and that flower's pistil and not allow it to reproduce.
Right.
So by honeybees moving indiscriminately between plants, they're inefficient pollinators, and they could even be causing crops to not fruit by moving pollen from different plants to that flower. But these North American plants, especially like squash has a very specific bee, the squash bee. Pepinapis is what it's called. So squash have these bees that are incredibly efficient pollinators of them. So having a squash bee presence in your pumpkin patch is necessary. And if you're putting a honeybee hive in your strawberry field, like there's been studies that show that with honeybee presence, yields decrease.
Wow.
In strawberry fields. And same thing with like apple orchards and whatnot as well.
Where maybe if you plant a refugia, you'll get more because you'll have a lot more of the native bees there.
Yeah, exactly. And if you provide them nesting habitats that are relevant to their nesting biology, we can start to provide habitat for bee species that might be more efficient for pollinating our crops that are from North America.
So when you bring in a hive of bees, of honeybees, would you see some of your native bees start going down?
Certainly, yeah. There's many studies that are showing and proving that this is the case. So from a number of different reasons, honeybees are extremely aggressive. They can be aggressive towards native bees. They can, just the presence of their smell on flowers will cause other bees to not visit those same flowers because they knew the honeybee was there already and took all the resources from that flower. Especially in places where there's really rare bees like Hawaii. There's a really great paper that shows that every time a honeybee visited this flower that this really extremely endangered, close to extinct Hawaiian bee would visit, that those Hawaiian very rare bees would not visit that plant anymore because honeybees were there. So every time a honeybee landed on that plant, those other bees left, which is causing competition for resources.
Yes,
and whatnot. So like what I like to imagine when I think about a honeybee hive is like it's like you're like letting like 10,000 cattle graze without fences in your neighbors' yards.
Oh sure, yeah. But now when I see insects on flowers and stuff, those could be bees. I just don't, I think of a bumblebee or a honeybee, but they could be in that
Hymenoptera. So there's within just the bees and bees of Missouri, there's close to 500 species of bee that are here in Missouri. And they can be anywhere from like metallic green, little metallic like jewel looking things, to like these big fuzzy bear-like completely yellow chicken nuggets like of bumblebees that are flying around. Like,
because we always think of bees as being either honeybees or bumblebees, but there's a whole lot in between.
Oh yeah, then there's leaf cutter bees. So like this kind of circles back into some of the interesting nesting behavior. So leaf cutter bees, they have these big mandibles that they use to cut leaves. So they'll take a chunk out of the margin of like a oak leaf or like a red bud leaf, and they'll curl it up and bring it back to their nest site, and then they'll line their nest with these leaves. So they make all of these little chambers in a cavity in a tree that are lined with leaves, and they fill those little chambers up with pollen and nectar and lay an egg on them and close them up.
So when that larvae hatches, it has something to eat?
Yeah, it has something to eat the pollen and nectar, and then it has these leaves now around it that are providing like an antimicrobial environment for that young to be raised in that's going to protect it from...
Oh my goodness.
It's incredible. And they'll use different plants. Each species some will use petals of flowers and not leaves, and other ones will... use different kinds of cavities. There's like a relative of the leafcutter bees are the mason bees, and instead of using leaves, they use like mud. So they'll go to a creek, fill up their gut with water, go to the creek bank, puke up that water on the mud, form that mud into a ball, bring that ball of mud back to their nest, and then form it into a little like sealed chamber for their young.
Well, because we all have mud daubers,
Yeah, exactly.
Same thing, I suppose.
Yeah, and those are closely related to bees. So that's like the bees came from the group of wasps that mud daubers are in.
Okay.
All bees come from solitary prey hunting wasps.
Really?
So every bee you see ancestrally is a wasp that was once hunting a prey item. So all bees are kind of like these vegetarian versions of solitary prey hunting wasps.
Oh, but
and they've grown lots of hair and like to transport their pollen.
Sure.
Yeah. So it's pretty interesting.
It's amazing how they over time have.
And then you see the similarity in their nesting habits.
Sure.
So that's where like these two groups are still kind of connected, and even though they're going out on a landscape and foraging for completely different items, one of them is paralyzing grasshoppers and dragging them back to their nest, but the other one is like only visiting sunflowers and taking the sunflower pollen and bringing it back to its nest. But they're both nesting in the same places and in the same fashions.
Wow. So this really makes you don't want to till up your garden, your flower gardens and stuff either in the fall, because you have all these nests built in probably.
In the ground. Yeah.
Yes.
So one of the first things that will like wipe out a bee community is the removal of the soil surface.
But of course, but you also mentioned that when you do something, you can also other plants come in.
This is where the nuance is if you scrape the entire topsoil of an area, like when they build these new developments all around here and they level the ground and completely clear the A layer of soil, you get rid of anything that was in that ground. But if you were to go to a tall grass prairie and roll around on the ground like a 3,000-pound bison, you now make a space that is different and it's in this one little area, and you're not scraping the entire topsoil. Sure. And now you have a space that's hotter, more open, more easily found on the landscape because it's this open space, and it looks different than all of the rest. So depending on the intensity of that disturbance,
sure.
You could be either greatly increasing the types of spaces that bees will nest in, or you're deleting everything that was once there.
So something that maybe what we consider overgrown may not be as diverse as something that has some disturbance to it.
Yeah.
Slight disturbance.
Yeah. So, oh man, I mean, this goes into some of my other research that like, I'm looking at how bison create habitat for ground nesting bees in prairie habitats.
Well, here, because we used to have buffalo wallers.
Yeah, that's exactly what I study is the wallows. Yeah.
I know you can still see them at times.
Yeah.
It's very low and wet a lot. And
that's what I like to think about with like this disturbance is that like the mammal composition, or just maybe even vertebrate, anything with a spine on this landscape has been so greatly changed within the last 300, 400 years that there was all of these behaviors that were taking place by these different kinds of animals on the landscape that made all of these very small and like discrete spaces that were useful for any amount of organisms, and bees and wasps in particular, I think were greatly affected by the removal of mammals on the landscape that coincided with westward expansion.
Well, even like mice, they probably can use their burrows. Exactly.
Yeah, bumblebees have been reported to nest in mice burrows, but even like thinking about like prairie dogs. You ever see a prairie dog town in shortgrass prairie? It's like an entirely different kind of space where there's now all this bare ground. The vegetation is different. They're changing the bulk density of the soil, like the compaction of the soil, which I can imagine is pretty important for for a wasp to be able to dig in the ground. So,
well, and you also mentioned like we have the cicadas here.
Yeah.
And all those grubs come out of the soil. Now the bees say, "Oh, look, there's some easy pickings for some nets."
And that's like an example of a very specific kind of disturbance.
Yes,
where it's like the landscape changed in this slight way because of how another animal lived its life.
Right.
And I think that a lot of our insects were historically adapted to the ways of life of other animals.
Sure. Yeah. All connected, wasn't it?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we got to eat our food, produce crops, but they can also be, they can live together.
Yeah.
Especially we have refuges and such can really help.
And that's what is so exciting about the future is how can we begin to think about how to merge these two different worlds in a way that is good for both of them.
Right. And maybe even cattle on your pastures, they can also do some of these same things.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. The cattle have a lot different behavior than bison, but they're certainly impacting the landscape by grazing and changing the way that plants are blooming and
right.
It all spins together and can we start to think about how we can incorporate bison or other large mammals on the landscape and think outside of the box in ways of creating these kinds of disturbances that allow for the things that pollinate our crops to expand their populations.
Right.
And I think that this is what excites me. It's
exactly.
How can we start thinking about how to incorporate all of these different kinds of ecology into our agriculture?
But like you found out is that when you do have on the edge, you can make a big impact just right there.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to have bison on the edge, but you're going to have some of the small mammals. You're going to have some of the birds as well as some of these different insects.
Yeah, and what's funny too is in a lot of these CRP plantings that I'm surveying, I'm finding that just someone mowing a path around the edge of their planting or even through the middle of it, if they like to walk around, that is a place where I'm finding tons of bee nests.
Oh, wow.
Because it's you have this very tall vegetation and then all of a sudden it drops down. It's mimicking, the mowing is mimicking a cattle grazing or a bison grazing. And now
deer trails.
Yeah, exactly. And there's go figure, there's all of these nests, bee nests in these mowed margins around these plantings. And that's not and that isn't a recommended thing by the NRCS or MDC. It's just something that the landowners do because they like to walk through this very beautiful planting that they just installed. And by doing that, they're creating the nest sites. Mimicking the nest sites. Right. But I would go ahead and venture to say that we should be recommending that we should put paths through. Maybe that could be something that could be a service. Someone goes mows a path through a...
That's right.
Instead of mowing lawns, let's mow paths.
Well, Josh, we could talk a lot more about this because it is so very interesting that it does help us with our food production and also just the whole natural beauty and everything going on. So, well, we encourage you on your research because you're going to Algeria.
Indeed, yep. We'll be
right.
there for a month in March.
That's gonna be exciting. All right. Well, this is it for Tim's Take, and we'll talk to you next time.